Hi everybody, it's Harvard Lawyer Lee. Today I want to talk about the question everybody's been wondering about. Is there going to be an appeal in the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard trial? And I think we have some new information that sheds light on it. So let's get into it. I want to talk first about Amber Heard's side of the case, whether or not she might appeal, and then I want to talk about it from Johnny Depp's side. I'll tell you kind of my thoughts at the end. So you'll remember, of course, the verdict. $10 million for Johnny Depp compensatory damages for defamation. Then $5 million punitive damages reduced to $350,000 because of the cap on punitive damages under Virginia law. Amber Heard won one of her 3 defamation claims, meaning she got $2 million. The total net judgment is that Amber Heard owes Johnny Depp $8,350,000. So is Amber Heard going to appeal? Does she want to appeal? Her lawyer did the round of the morning talk shows this past week, and let's just hear what she has to say.
It's like the Roman Colosseum, how they viewed this whole case. I was against cameras in the courtroom, and I went on record with that and had argued against it because of the sensitive nature of this. But it made it a zoo.
Does your client want to appeal?
Oh, absolutely. And she has some excellent grounds for it. We even had tried to get the UK judgment in to dismiss his case because he already had his shot. And that's one of the issues, but also a number of the evidentiary issues. There was so much evidence that did not come in.
Is she able to pay a $10.4 million judgment?
Oh, no, absolutely not.
So Amber Heard's attorney said clearly that absolutely Amber Heard would appeal and that she had excellent grounds for appeal. Although I have to say the ground she talked about immediately afterwards, that they had tried to get the UK case to be the replacement for the US case, that the UK ruling would replace the US ruling, is not a good argument on appeal. I cannot imagine that would be their appeal because the cases were different. One was Johnny Depp against a newspaper. Amber Heard was not even a party. The other one in the US was Johnny Depp against Amber Heard. The evidence that came in was different because the 2 cases were different. So I don't believe that would be a very likely ground for appeal. So surely there's other things that they would appeal on, probably the evidence. I did an earlier video about some of the evidence that they put in their proffer. Those are the things where you look for that might be an appeal in the future. Those are the places where I think they'll turn if they decide to appeal. And she said that they would do that her client wanted to do that. I don't think that's their real appeal issue, but I think that they'll use evidence that wasn't admitted. But there are a few obstacles for them to get to that appellate court, much less to get the verdict overturned. First is the appellate bond, because Elaine may have shot her client in the foot by admitting that her client does not have enough money to pay the judgment. You have to have grounds for the appeal too. You have to have reasons. And in this particular case, I think the courts are going to be extremely reluctant to overturn the case unless there's a clear error of law. You've got an entire community that was upturned because of this case. You've got not just the judge and the parties and the lawyers, you've got all of the court personnel, all of the police who came to the courthouse and dealt with the crowds. It has been an extreme cost, extraordinary cost for the local community. And it was tried over a number of weeks. The parties were well represented. The appellate court is going to be really reluctant to overturn that, just given how much effort went into that. But I will say, it is always the case, that if you try a case for 6 solid weeks and a judge makes literally thousands of decisions from every single motion in limine that was filed by the parties to the evidence that was presented or not presented at trial, what was admitted or not admitted at trial, and then the objections at trial. All of those things, somewhere in there is something an appellate court could disagree with. So there is always a possibility of that. And with a case this big, this long, it's possible. It was very well tried by the judge. So I think it's going to be difficult to get this case overturned on appeal. But there are always grounds that they can go to. Now let's take a look at this from Johnny's side. Johnny's side was asked by George Stephanopoulos in an interview about what exactly Johnny Depp wanted out of the case, about the appeal. Let's hear what they had to say.
Heard's lawyer says she plans to appeal the verdict. She doesn't have the money to pay for the judgment. And you all said that the goal is not to impoverish Ms. Heard. Is it possible we could see a settlement where she foregoes the appeal in return for Mr. Depp waiving any monetary damages?
Well, George, we obviously can't disclose attorney-client communications, but as Mr. Depp testified, and as we both made clear in our respective closings, this was never about money for Mr. Depp. So this was about restoring his reputation, and he's done that.
So you're not disclosing any privileges, but it sounds like that's something that could be on the table, but it's up to Ms. Heard.
Again, we have to be careful what we say, but this was about Mr. Depp's reputation. That was what it was about for him.
So that second question was a good try by George Stephanopoulos, but obviously Ben Chu is a seasoned enough lawyer. He went right back to the exact answer he'd had before. The answer is, I'm still not going to tell you. I'm still not going to say anything about it. So what that said to me as an attorney is that it seems to me like Johnny Depp's team is looking at the question of whether or not they can settle the case with Amber Heard. For those of you who have been with me on the channel, if you were with me from the very first day as we watched the verdict, I said the same thing. Johnny Depp's team has said repeatedly, and they're saying even after the verdict, that money is not important to him, that he wanted to get his reputation back. And Ben Chu's quote was something like, and Johnny Depp already has what he wants. What that means to me is that the last thing Johnny Depp wants is an appeal. So what we've got then is a situation where Johnny Depp does not want an appeal, because all that could happen for him is that it gets reversed and it gets sent back and he has to start over. If it gets affirmed, that's not really anything to him, because it simply means he has a debt owed to him by somebody who says she can't pay. That's all it would mean. And he will have spent more money on the appeal, and she says she can't pay. So that's not really very valuable to him, that appeal. So for Johnny Depp, the appeal is not very valuable. He would rather not have it. For Amber Heard, the appeal may be unaffordable, and she may not be able to pay for the verdict. What makes sense here is a settlement between the two parties. Either Amber Heard would pay nothing at all, or Amber Heard would pay a nominal amount. Maybe it could even go to charity, donated to charity, not pledged to charity, of course. There would have to be proof of that. But obviously Depp is signaling that he'd be open to that he would be willing to do that. That would be a great solution here, because the prospect of retrying this case has to be something that virtually no one wants. Look, Johnny Depp has what he wants. Amber Heard can't really get much benefit. Amber Heard probably can't afford another trial. Remember that her attorney said in closing statements and opening that she had spent $6 million on attorneys. So if she doesn't have enough to pay $8,350,000 to Johnny Depp, she almost surely doesn't have enough to pay $6 million in attorney's fees again. So what has to happen is there needs to be a solution to this. One that makes sense is for the two parties to settle. What will get in the way for her personally is a lot of emotions like embarrassment or pride or anger about the result. And on top of that are the desires of the people who have supported her and who believe this is a setback more globally for victims of DV. So Amber Heard may not have a choice, though. She may need to take that settlement. It may be the best decision for her given the circumstances. And it may be that it makes sense for her to settle the case for a small payment and get it over with, over and done. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.